My name is Sasha, and for the last 3 years, I have lived in a nightmare disguised as a marriage. I sprinted through the heavy oak doors of the Davis family mansion in Buckhead, out of breath and sweating. The house was a sprawling estate that smelled of old money and lemon polish, a place where I was supposed to be a wife, but was treated worse than the help. I ran straight to the living room where my sister-in-law Tiffany was pacing back and forth. Tiffany was 30 years old with bleached blonde hair and a personality that could curdle milk. She was wearing a silk robe and pointing a manicured finger at a crumpled black Chanel dress on the sofa. Finally, she spat, looking at her diamond-encrusted watch. "Do you know what time it is, Sasha? I have the charity gala in an hour, and look at this. It is a wrinkled mess." I tried to catch my breath. "I am sorry, Tiffany, the line at the pharmacy was long and your mother needed her refill." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "I do not care about your excuses. I care about my image. Fix it. Now." She kicked the dress toward me. I picked it up, feeling the expensive fabric between my rough, calloused fingers. My husband Jamal was sitting on the leather recliner just 10 feet away. He was watching a football game, completely ignoring the fact that his sister was treating his wife like a dry cleaner. "Jamal," I said softly, hoping for just an ounce of support. He did not even look away from the screen. "Just do what she says, babe. You know how she gets when she is stressed." I swallowed my pride just like I did every single day. I set up the ironing board right there in the living room because Tiffany refused to let the dress leave her sight. My hands were shaking, partially from the run and partially from the strange encounter at the pharmacy. The woman's face kept flashing in my mind. She looked so expensive yet so sad. "Faster, Sasha," Tiffany barked, sipping a green smoothie. "You are moving like a snail." I pressed the steam button, trying to smooth out a stubborn crease near the hem. The iron hissed. My mind drifted back to the woman. She said I looked like her daughter. Brianna. Why did that name feel so familiar? Suddenly I felt a sharp shove. Tiffany had pushed my shoulder. "Are you deaf?" I said. "Watch out for the sequins." The shove made me stumble. The hot iron slipped from my hand. I tried to catch it, but it was too late. It landed face down on the antique Persian rug. "No!" Tiffany screamed. I lunged for the iron, searing the skin on my forearm, but the damage was done. A brown triangle-shaped burn mark was already forming on the intricate wool pattern, and the smell of singing fabric filled the room. "You idiot!" Tiffany shrieked, her face turning red. "Do you know how much this rug costs? It is worth more than your entire existence." She grabbed the hot iron by the handle and swung it back. For a second, I thought she was going to hit me with it. I flinched, covering my face. Instead, she threw it across the room, smashing a vase, and then turned her rage on me. "Get on your knees," she commanded, pointing at the floor. "You are going to scrub that out until it is gone. I do not care if it takes you all night. You are not sleeping until this rug is perfect." I looked at Jamal. He finally looked up from the TV, but not with concern for my burned arm. "Damn it, Sasha," he muttered. "Why are you always so clumsy? Mom is going to kill us." That was it. "No. Are you okay? No, let me get some ice. Just worry about his mother." I dropped to my knees, tears stinging my eyes, and began to scrub the burn mark with a cloth and sparkling water. The humiliation burned hotter than my arm. I was an orphan who grew up in the system. I thought marrying Jamal was my ticket to a family, to belonging, but I had just traded a group home for a prison with marble floors. As I scrubbed, Tiffany stood over me, taking a selfie for her social media. "Ugh, good help is so hard to find," she narrated into her phone, laughing. I scrubbed until my knuckles were raw. The burn mark was fading, but the resentment in my heart was growing. I needed a distraction. I reached into the pocket of my jeans to get a tissue, and my fingers brushed against a piece of thick cardstock. I pulled it out. It was the business card the woman at the pharmacy had slipped into my pocket when I ran away. I cupped it in my hand, hiding it from Tiffany. The text was embossed in gold foil. "Vivian Sterling, CEO, Sterling Pharmaceuticals." My breath caught in my throat. Sterling Pharmaceuticals. That was one of the biggest companies in Atlanta. The woman in the pharmacy was a billionaire, and she thought I was her daughter. I glanced up. Tiffany was busy editing her photo. Jamal had fallen asleep with his mouth open. I needed to know more. I am going to get some stain remover from the laundry room, I mumbled, standing up. Make it quick, Tiffany snapped without looking up. I hurried to the laundry room and locked the door. My hands were trembling as I pulled out my cracked smartphone. I typed Vivian Sterling into the search bar. Hundreds of articles popped up. Vivian Sterling, the Iron Lady of Biotech. Vivian Sterling donates millions to orphanages. But the search result that made my heart stop was an old article from 20 years ago. The headline read, "Toddler Heiress Kidnapped. Brianna Sterling vanishes from park." I clicked on the images. There was a photo of a beautiful black woman holding a baby girl. The woman looked exactly like the lady in the pharmacy, just younger. And the baby. I zoomed in on the baby photo. The article mentioned a distinguishing feature. The missing child has a unique birthmark on the inside of her right wrist shaped like a butterfly. I dropped the phone on top of the dryer. The room started to spin. I slowly rolled up the sleeve of my oversized sweatshirt. I looked at my right wrist. There, stark against my skin, was the reddish-brown mark I had hated my whole life. Tiffany called it my dirt stain. Jamal told me to cover it up with a watch. It was shaped exactly like a butterfly. I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand to stifle a scream. I wasn't just Sasha the orphan nobody wanted. I wasn't just Sasha the servant to the Davis family. I was Brianna Sterling. I was the heir to a billion-dollar empire. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness this time. They were tears of shock and terrified realization. If I was Brianna, then how did I end up in the foster system? Why did nobody find me? Before I could process another thought, the laundry room door handle rattled violently. "Open this door," a voice boomed. It wasn't Tiffany. It was worse. It was Patricia, my mother-in-law. I scrambled to hide the phone, but I was too slow. Patricia used her master key and the door swung open. She stood there, towering over me in her designer suit, her eyes cold and calculating. She looked at my flushed face, then down at the phone still glowing on the dryer. She lunged forward with shocking speed for a woman her age. She grabbed the phone before I could lock the screen. Her eyes scanned the page. I saw the color drain from her face. She saw the photo of Vivian. She saw the headline about the kidnapping. Most people would look confused, but Patricia did not look confused. She looked terrified. "You little sneak!" she hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. "Who gave you this idea? Did you talk to her?" I stepped back, backing into the ironing board. I did not say anything, but my silence was answer enough. Patricia raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed in the small room. My cheek stung, but the shock of her reaction was more painful. "Give me that card," she demanded, seeing the corner of gold foil poking out of my pocket. She snatched the business card from me and tore it into tiny pieces, throwing them into the trash can like they were toxic waste. "You are going to listen to me, and you are going to listen good," Patricia snarled, stepping into my personal space until I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the scent of fear. "You are Sasha. You are a nobody from the gutter. You are not going to talk to Vivian Sterling. You are not going to look at her. You are not going to breathe the same air as her. Why are you so afraid?" I whispered, clutching my stinging cheek. Patricia grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. "Because I own you, Sasha. And if you think you can leave this family, I will make sure you end up in a place much worse than a foster home. I will bury you." She shoved me backward, grabbed my phone, and walked out, slamming the door. I heard the lock click from the outside. "Let me out!" I screamed, banging on the door. "Patricia, give me back my phone." Silence. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees. My wrist throbbed where the birthmark was. My mind was racing. Patricia wasn't just mean. She was hiding something massive. Why would she be so scared of me finding my biological mother unless she knew something about how I went missing? I pressed my ear against the cold wood of the door, holding my breath. I could hear Patricia's footsteps pacing in the hallway. Then I heard her dialing a number on her own phone. Her voice was muffled, but in the quiet house I could make out the words. Pick up, she muttered. Then, we have a problem, a big problem. The little rat found out about Vivian. She has the birthmark. No, I took her phone. She is locked in the laundry room. We have to accelerate the plan. We need to get the insurance money and get rid of her before she gets a DNA test. Tonight, my blood ran cold. Insurance money. Get rid of her. They weren't just using me as a servant. They were planning to kill me. I looked around the laundry room frantically. There was no window, only a ventilation vent near the ceiling. I had to get out. I had to get to Vivian Sterling. My life depended on it. I dragged the laundry basket over to the dryer and climbed up. The vent was screwed shut, but the screws were old and rusted. I used my fingernails scratching at the metal until they broke, but it wouldn't budge. I grabbed a loose zipper from a pair of jeans waiting to be washed and used the metal tab as a makeshift screwdriver. One screw came loose, then the second. Downstairs I heard Tiffany laughing. She was probably enjoying the fact that I was locked up. I heard Jamal laughing with her. My husband. The man who vowed to protect me was downstairs eating dinner while his mother plotted my murder. I kicked the vent cover open. A blast of dusty air hit my face. It was tight, incredibly tight, but I had been underfed by this family for years. I pulled myself up, scraping my elbows, shimmying into the darkness of the ductwork. I crawled through the metal tunnel listening to the sounds of the house below. I crawled past the living room vent seeing the top of Tiffany's blonde head. I crawled past the kitchen smelling the roast chicken I wasn't allowed to eat. Finally, I reached the vent that led to the outside of the garage. I pushed it open and tumbled out into the bushes, scratching my face on the thorns. It was dark now. The air was cold. I had no phone, no money, no car, but I had the truth. I started running. I ran down the long driveway past the security gates that were meant to keep people out but had kept me in. I ran until my lungs burned. I didn't know exactly where Sterling Pharmaceuticals was, but I knew it was a skyscraper in Midtown. I just had to follow the city lights. I ran for hours. My feet were blistered in my cheap sneakers. Cars honked at me. A police cruiser slowed down, but I hid behind a dumpster, terrified that Patricia had already reported me as a runaway or a thief. By the time I reached the glass tower of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, it was past midnight. The building soared into the sky, lit up like a beacon. I stumbled into the lobby, gasping for air, looking like a madwoman. My hair was wild, my clothes were stained with rug cleaner and dirt, and I had no shoes because I had lost them crawling through the vent. The security guard, a large man with a stern face, stepped in front of me. "Miss, you cannot be in here. This is private property. You need to leave." "Please," I rasped, holding my side. "I need to see Vivian Sterling." He looked at me with pity, but shook his head. "Ms. Sterling is in a board meeting on the top floor. She does not see visitors, especially not at this hour. Go to a shelter, honey." "No, you do not understand," I cried, grabbing his sleeve. "She is my mother." The guard sighed, reaching for his radio. "Look, I do not want to call the cops, but you are creating a disturbance." Just then, the elevator doors chimed. A group of people in expensive suits walked out. In the center of them was the woman from the pharmacy, Vivian Sterling. She looked exhausted, her head down, listening to a lawyer whisper in her ear. "Vivian," I screamed. The guard grabbed me. "That is enough." Vivian stopped. Her head snapped up. She looked across the lobby and saw me struggling with the guard. Her eyes went wide. "Wait!" she commanded. Her voice echoed through the marble lobby. She pushed past her lawyers and ran toward me. The guard let me go, looking confused. Vivian stopped inches from me. She looked at my dirty face, my torn clothes, my terrified eyes. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking. I held out my right arm. My hand was shaking violently. I rolled up the dirty sleeve of my sweatshirt. Vivian looked down. She saw the butterfly birthmark. She let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She fell to her knees right there on the cold floor, not caring about her $1,000 suit. She grabbed my hand and pressed her forehead against my wrist, weeping uncontrollably. "It is you," she sobbed. My baby. My Brianna. I fell to my knees with her wrapping my arms around the mother I had dreamed of for 20 years. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. But safety was an illusion. Suddenly, Vivian's lawyer stepped forward looking at his phone. Ms. Sterling. I am sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The police are downstairs. A woman named Patricia Davis has filed a report. She claims a dangerous, mentally unstable servant attacked her and ran away with stolen jewelry. She says the woman is likely heading here to harass you. I froze. Patricia was faster than I thought. Vivian stood up, pulling me with her. Her face changed. The tears vanished, replaced by a look of cold, terrifying fury. She wiped her face and looked at the lawyer. "Let them come," Vivian said, her voice like steel. "Patricia Davis thinks she is hunting a servant. She has no idea she just declared war on the Sterling family." She looked at me, squeezing my hand. "Do not worry, Brianna. You are not going back to that house as a victim. You are going back as the owner. But first, we need to play a game." Vivian pulled me toward the private elevator. "We are going to the penthouse. We need to clean you up. Tomorrow you are going back to the Davis house." I looked at her, shocked. "What?" "No. They will kill me." "No, they won't," Vivian said, a dark smile playing on her lips. "Because they won't know you are Brianna. You are going back as Sasha, the scared little mouse. You are going to wear a wire. And you are going to get me the one thing I need to destroy Patricia Davis forever. A confession." The elevator doors closed, sealing us in. I looked at my reflection in the mirrored walls. The scared girl from the pharmacy was gone. I was about to walk back into hell, but this time I was bringing the devil's mother with me. The digital clock on the wall of the guest room blinked midnight. I was trapped. Patricia had locked the laundry room, but I had managed to crawl through the narrow ventilation shaft into the unused guest bedroom on the second floor. My body ached from the tight squeeze and my knees were scraped raw, but I could not stop now. Downstairs, I could hear the faint murmur of voices. Patricia was on the phone, likely plotting how to make me disappear before I could take a DNA test. I knew I could not use the stairs. The security system on the main doors would trip instantly if I tried to open them without a code, and the keypad beeped loud enough to wake the dead. My only way out was the window. I walked over to the large bay window and unlatched it. The cold night air of Atlanta rushed in, hitting my sweaty face. I looked down. It was a 20-foot drop to the manicured rose garden below. The only thing connecting me to the ground was an old wooden trellis covered in thick ivy. It looked brittle, barely strong enough to hold the weight of the climbing plants, let alone a grown woman. But I had no choice. It was either risk a broken leg or risk being silenced permanently by my mother-in-law. I threw one leg over the sill, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Do not look down, Sasha. Just move," I whispered to myself. I grabbed a thick vine and tested my weight. The wood groaned, a sickening crack echoing in the silent night. I froze, holding my breath, waiting for the lights in Tiffany's room to flick on. Silence. I exhaled and began my descent. The ivy was rough, scratching my palms and arms. Every inch was a battle against gravity. Halfway down, my foot slipped on a loose brick. I gasped as my body swung out, dangling by my hands. My shoulders screamed in pain, burning as if it were on fire. I scrambled for a foothold, my sneakers scraping against the brick wall. Finally, my toe found the trellis again. I reached the bottom, dropping the last few feet into the soft mulch of the flower bed. My ankle twisted slightly, sending a jolt of pain up my leg, but I bit my lip to keep from crying out. I was out of the house, but I was not safe yet. I had to get past the perimeter gate. Thankfully, the service gate near the garbage bins was always left unlocked for the sanitation workers in the morning. I limped toward it, keeping to the shadows of the tall hedges, praying the motion sensor floodlights would not trigger. I slipped through the metal gate and out onto the street. I did not look back at the mansion that had been my prison. I just started running. The distance from the Buckhead estate to Midtown Atlanta was over 5 miles. Under normal circumstances, it would be a quick drive. But tonight, with no money, no phone, and a throbbing ankle, it felt like a marathon through hell. The streets were dark and empty. The wind cut through my thin sweatshirt, chilling me to the bone. Every time a car passed, I jumped into the bushes, terrified it might be Patricia or Jamal coming to drag me back. My appearance deteriorated with every mile. My hair, usually pulled back neatly, was now a wild mess of tangles and leaves from the bushes. My jeans were torn at the knees from the ventilation shaft, and my face was smeared with soot and dirt. I caught my reflection in a shop window as I entered the city limits, and I barely recognized myself. I looked like a madwoman. I looked like someone who belonged on the street, not the heir to a fortune. By the time the glass tower of Sterling Pharmaceuticals came into view, my lungs were burning and my legs felt like lead. The building was magnificent, a beacon of steel and light piercing the night sky. It represented everything I was denied: power, respect, and truth. I stumbled toward the revolving doors, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The lobby inside was warm and glowing with golden light. I pushed through the doors, collapsing momentarily against a marble pillar. "Hey, you cannot be in here!" a booming voice shouted. A security guard, a large man with a stern face and a uniform that looked too tight, was marching toward me. He looked at my dirty clothes and my wild eyes with disgust. "Please," I rasped, my throat dry. "I need to see Vivian Sterling." The guard laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty lobby. "Yeah, and I need to see the president. Get out of here before I call the cops. This is private property, not a homeless shelter." "No, you do not understand," I pleaded, trying to stand up straight to show some dignity, though my legs were shaking. "She knows me. I have important information for her. It is life or death." The guard grabbed my arm, his grip painful on my bruised skin. "Look, lady, Ms. Sterling is in a board meeting. She does not have time for junkies looking for a handout. Now walk out or I throw you out." I tried to pull away, panic rising in my chest. If he threw me out, Patricia would find me. I would be dead by morning. "Vivian," I screamed, my voice cracking. "Vivian, help me!" "Shut up!" the guard snarled, dragging me toward the door. Just then, blinding white lights flooded the circular driveway outside the glass doors. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb, its engine purring like a panther. The guard hesitated, looking at the car. The back door opened, and a woman stepped out. It was her, Vivian Sterling. She looked exhausted, clutching a leather portfolio flanked by two men in suits. She was walking briskly toward the entrance, her head down, lost in thought. She looked powerful, untouchable, a queen in her castle. "Vivian!" I shouted again, using the last of my strength to twist out of the guard's grip. The guard slammed me against the glass wall. "That is it. You are going to jail." Vivian stopped. She looked up, her brow furrowed. She saw the commotion. She saw a dirty, desperate woman being manhandled by her security staff. Most billionaires would have looked away or signaled for the guard to handle it. But Vivian paused. She squinted, looking through the glass. "Let her go," Vivian said, her voice muffled by the doors, but the command was unmistakable. The automatic doors slid open. Vivian walked into the lobby, the clicking of her heels silencing the room. The guard immediately let go of me, straightening his uniform. "Ms. Sterling." "I am so sorry," the guard stammered, sweating. "This woman is crazy. She refused to leave. I was just removing the trash." Vivian ignored him. She walked straight up to me. She stood inches away, smelling of expensive jasmine perfume and rain. She looked at my torn clothes. She looked at the soot on my cheeks. And then she looked into my eyes. I stood there trembling, unable to speak. I just looked back at her, letting all the pain and fear of the last 20 years pour out of me. Vivian's breath hitched. Her professional mask crumbled. Her eyes, usually steel gray and intimidating, suddenly filled with tears. She reached out a shaking hand, her fingers hovering near my face, as if she was afraid I was a ghost that would disappear if she touched me. "Stop," she whispered to the guard, though he had already backed away. She looked deep into my eyes, searching for something only a mother would know. The lobby fell silent. The lawyers behind her stopped checking their watches. Those eyes, Vivian choked out a tear sliding down her perfect cheek. You have his eyes. You have William's eyes. She did not ask who I was. She did not ask why I was dirty. She grabbed my shoulders, pulling me into her, burying her face in my tangled, dirty hair. And in that moment, in the arms of a stranger who felt like home, I knew the war against Patricia Davis had just begun. The private elevator ride to the top floor of the Sterling Tower took less than a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. The silence was heavy, filled only by the hum of the machinery and the erratic beating of my own heart. Vivian Sterling stood next to me, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her knuckles white. She refused to look at me, as if she was terrified that if she blinked, I would vanish into thin air like a hallucination. When the doors slid open with a soft chime, I stepped into a world I had only ever seen in movies. The office was not just a room. It was a sanctuary of glass and mahogany, overlooking the entire glittering skyline of Atlanta. It was bigger than the entire ground floor of the Davis mansion. But Vivian did not care about the view. She marched straight to her massive desk, swept a pile of legal documents onto the floor with a crash, and turned to face me. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to a leather chair that probably cost more than my life. I sat down, feeling small and dirty in my torn clothes. Vivian knelt before me. It was a shocking sight. The Iron Lady of Biotech. A woman who made senators tremble was on her knees in front of a runaway servant. "Show me the wrist again," she whispered. I extended my arm. She traced the butterfly-shaped birthmark with her thumb, her touch feather light. Her breathing was ragged. "It is the same," she murmured to herself. "The same pigment, the same irregular edge on the left wing. But birthmarks can be coincidental. That is what the lawyers will say." She looked up at me, her eyes intense and desperate. "Take off your left shoe." I hesitated. My sneakers were old, cheap, and smelled of the swamp water I had run through. My socks were mismatched and had holes in the heels. The shame of my poverty washed over me again. "Please," Vivian said, her voice cracking. "Just do it." I slowly untied the knot and pulled off the damp sneaker, then peeled off the sock. My foot was calloused and bruised from the run. Vivian took my foot in her hands, ignoring the dirt. She turned my heel slightly and brushed her thumb over the arch of my foot. There, she gasped. Running along the side of my foot was a thin, white, jagged scar, barely an inch long. It was so faint most people would never notice it. I had had it for as long as I could remember, but I never knew where it came from. The orphanage matrons had told me I probably cut it on a rusty nail. "You were 3 years old," Vivian said, tears finally spilling over her lashes and dripping onto my skin. "We were in the Hamptons. You were running on the beach chasing a seagull. You stepped on a piece of blue sea glass. You cried for an hour not because it hurt, but because the blood ruined your favorite white sandals." She looked up at me, and the wall she had built around her heart for 20 years crumbled completely. "I sewed the stitches myself because I did not want the doctors to scare you. I used a special suture technique I learned in med school. That scar pattern is unique. It is my signature." She pulled me into her arms, burying her face in my lap. "My baby." She wailed a sound of pure, raw grief and joy that echoed off the glass walls. "You came home." "Oh God. Brianna, you finally came home." I sat there stunned as the memories I did not know I had unlocked. The smell of her perfume triggered a flash of a memory. Warm hands. A soft lullaby. A woman laughing as she chased me on the sand. It wasn't a dream. It was my life. The life Patricia Davis had stolen from me. I wrapped my dirty arms around her shoulders and wept. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't Sasha the orphan. I wasn't Sasha the servant. I was Brianna. And I was held. We stayed like that for a long time, until the city lights outside blurred into a kaleidoscope of gold and red. Finally, Vivian pulled back. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and the mother was replaced by the CEO. Her eyes hardened into diamonds. She stood up and walked to her desk, hitting a button on her intercom. "Get me the police commissioner. And call the FBI. I want the entire legal team in here in 5 minutes." "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Vivian slammed her hand on the desk. "I am going to burn them to the ground. Patricia Davis, her son, that leech of a daughter-in-law. I am going to have them arrested tonight. Kidnapping, fraud, child abuse. I will make sure they never see the sun again. They stole 20 years of my life. They treated my daughter like a slave. I will destroy them." She reached for the phone, her hand trembling with rage. "No," I said. The word hung in the air. Vivian stopped the receiver halfway to her ear. She looked at me confused. "Brianna, they are criminals. They are dangerous. We have to—" "No," I repeated, standing up. My legs were shaky, but my voice was firm. "If you call the police now, what happens? They get arrested. They hire expensive lawyers. They plead insanity, or say they adopted me in good faith. Maybe they spend a few years in a minimum security prison. Maybe they get out on parole." I walked toward her, the anger inside me cold and sharp, unlike her fiery rage. For 3 years I scrubbed their floors, I washed their underwear, I ate their leftovers. I listened to Tiffany call me trash while she spent money she did not earn. I watched Jamal cheat on me and tell me I was lucky he looked at me. "Jail is too easy for them, Mother." Vivian looked at me, her eyes widening at the word mother. "I do not want them to just go to jail," I hissed, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms. "I want them to suffer. I want them to feel what it is like to be powerless. I want to take their money. I want to take their company. I want to take their house. I want them to be standing on the street with nothing but the clothes on their backs, begging for $1 just like they thought I would be." Vivian slowly put the phone down. A dark look of understanding passed between us. It was a look that said we were cut from the same cloth. We were survivors. "You want revenge?" Vivian stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "I want justice," I corrected. "But I want it to be sweet. The Davis family is about to sign a merger with that investment firm, right? The one that will save their company from bankruptcy." Vivian nodded. "Blue Horizon Ventures. It is a shell company. I own it. I was going to buy them out to expand my distribution network." I smiled, a smile that felt foreign on my face because it lacked any warmth. "Perfect. Don't buy them out yet. Let them think they have won. Let them think the deal is sealed. I am going back there." Vivian grabbed my arm. "Absolutely not. I just got you back. I am not sending you back into that house with that woman. She threatened to kill you, Brianna. She won't kill me if she thinks I am still her scared little servant," I argued. "She thinks I ran away because I was terrified. If I go back, beg for forgiveness, and tell her I was just having a panic attack, she will believe it because she thinks I am weak. She needs me to sign those insurance papers right. She needs me alive until she gets the money." Vivian paced the room, conflicted. "It is too dangerous. I need to get the evidence," I insisted. "I need access to the safe in her office. I need to record her admitting what she did. If we go to court now, it is your word against hers. But if I get her on tape, if I get the financial records proving she has been cooking the books, then we don't just put her in jail. We end the Davis legacy forever." Vivian stopped pacing. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and immense pride. "You are definitely my daughter," she whispered. "You have my stubbornness." She walked over to a hidden panel in the wall and pressed her palm against it. A safe slid open. She pulled out a velvet box and a small black case. "If we do this, we do it my way," Vivian said, her voice commanding. She opened the velvet box. Inside was a sleek silver Mont Blanc pen. "This is not just a pen," she explained, twisting the cap. "It is a high-fidelity recording device. It can pick up a whisper from across the room. It uploads directly to my private server in real time. You keep this in your pocket. Do not lose it." She then opened the black case. Inside was a tiny device smaller than a dime. This is a military-grade GPS tracker, she said. I am going to sew this into the hem of your jeans right now. If your heart rate spikes, or if you stay in one location for too long without moving, my security team will storm that house. I will be in a van 2 streets away the entire time. You are not alone in there. I nodded, taking the pen. It felt heavy like a weapon. One more thing, Vivian said, reaching for a tissue. We have to clean you up, but not too much. You have to look defeated. You have to look like you crawled back because you had nowhere else to go. She wiped the worst of the soot from my face, but left the tear tracks. She messed up my hair even more. It broke her heart to do it, I could see it in her eyes, but she knew it was necessary for the disguise. Remember, Vivian said, gripping my shoulders hard. You are a Trojan horse. You are entering their walls to bring them down. Do not let them break you. You are a sterling. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window. The scared girl who ran out of the pharmacy was gone. Staring back at me was a woman who was ready to walk into hell and set it on fire. I am ready, I said. Send me back. The black Rolls-Royce dropped me off a block away from the Davis estate, just as the first hint of gray light began to bleed into the Atlanta sky. Vivian offered to have her security team disable the perimeter alarms, but I told her no. If I was going to play this role, I had to play it perfectly. I had to be Sasha the survivor, not Brianna the heiress. Not yet. I crept through the service gate, my heart beating with a steady, cold rhythm that was entirely new to me. The fear that had paralyzed me for 3 years was gone, replaced by the weight of the silver recording pen hidden deep inside my bra. Climbing back up the trellis was infinitely harder than climbing down. My muscles screamed in protest, and my bruised ankle throbbed with every inch I ascended. I dug my fingers into the rough brick, ignoring the pain. I imagined Patricia's face behind bars. I imagined Tiffany scrubbing floors. That image gave me the strength to pull myself over the ledge and tumble onto the guest room floor, just as the automatic sprinklers hissed to life in the garden below. I quickly closed the window and crawled back into the ventilation shaft to make my way to the laundry room. I had to be found exactly where Patricia had locked me. I curled up on the cold tile floor of the laundry room, shivering not from cold, but from adrenaline. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I rehearsed my lines. I visualized my mask. When Patricia unlocked the door 2 hours later, she found me huddled in the corner, looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. Get up, she barked, kicking my leg. You have work to do. And if you ever try to run away again, I will make sure the police find your body in a ditch, not a shelter. I nodded, keeping my head down. Yes, Mother. I am sorry. I was just scared. She scoffed, satisfied that her threats had worked. Go make breakfast. Tiffany is hungover and she wants the blueberry pancakes. Don't burn them like you did last week. I walked into the kitchen, my body aching, but my mind sharp. I prepared the batter, listening to the house wake up. Jamal shuffled in first, looking at his phone, not even acknowledging my presence. Then Tiffany sashayed in, wearing sunglasses inside the house and carrying her brand new Hermes Birkin bag, a bright orange leather trophy that cost more than a car. She slammed it down on the counter right next to the stove. Coffee, she groaned, sitting down. And make it strong. I have a headache that could kill a horse. I poured a fresh pot of steaming dark roast coffee. My hands were steady. I walked toward the table where Tiffany was massaging her temples. As I passed her, she stretched out her leg. It was not an accident. I saw her smirk in the reflection of the oven door. Her foot hooked around my ankle. I stumbled forward. The hot coffee sloshed out of the carafe, splashing onto my hand and chest. I gasped as the scalding liquid burned my skin, dropping to my knees to catch myself. The carafe hit the floor, but miraculously did not break. Tiffany erupted in laughter. Oh my God, look at you! You are such a clumsy cow. Did you have a nice trip, Sasha? Jamal chuckled, biting into a piece of toast. Babe, be careful. She might sue us for workplace injury. They laughed together, a cruel, harmonious sound that used to make me want to die. Patricia walked in, stepping over me as if I were a pile of dirty laundry. What is this mess? Patricia demanded. Clean it up, Sasha. And if you got any coffee on my floor, you are licking it up. I stayed on the floor for a moment. the old instinct to apologize rising in my throat. But then I felt the cool metal of the pen against my skin. I remembered Vivian's tears. I remembered the scar on my foot. I looked up at Tiffany. She was busy checking her makeup in a compact mirror, completely unbothered by my pain. Something inside me snapped. Not a loud snap, but a quiet, irreversible click. I stood up slowly. I picked up the carafe. It was still half full of boiling hot coffee. "I am so sorry, Tiffany," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Let me help you with that." I took a step toward her. Tiffany looked up, confused by my tone. "Help me with what?" she asked. I lifted the carafe. I did not aim for her face. That would be assault. I aimed for the one thing she loved more than herself. I tilted the pot and poured the dark, scalding liquid directly into the open mouth of her $20,000 Hermes Birkin bag. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The coffee filled the bag, soaking the leather, ruining the silk lining, destroying the wallet and phone inside. Steam rose from the orange leather as it turned a dark, soggy brown. Tiffany stared at her bag, her brain unable to process what was happening. Jamal stopped chewing. Patricia froze mid-step. Then Tiffany screamed. A sound so high-pitched it probably shattered glass in the next county. "My bag," she shrieked, clawing at the soggy mess. "You crazy witch, you ruined my bag." She jumped up, knocking her chair over, and lunged at me. I stepped back smoothly, letting her crash into the counter. Patricia rushed forward, her face purple with rage. "Have you lost your mind? That bag costs more than your life." I looked at them holding the empty carafe. I did not flinch. I did not cry. I let a small, cold smile play on my lips. "Oops," I said, staring dead into Tiffany's eyes. My hands were just so slippery. "I guess I really am clumsy." "You are dead," Tiffany screamed, grabbing a steak knife from the table. "I am going to kill her." "Mom, she did it on purpose." Patricia grabbed Tiffany's arm, holding her back, but her eyes were fixed on me with a new kind of fear. She saw something she had never seen before. Defiance. Jamal stood up, looking terrified. "Sasha, what is wrong with you? You have snapped." Before anyone could move, the front doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring, it was a heavy, authoritative pounding. Patricia's face twisted into a smug grin. "Ah, perfect timing. I called them an hour ago when I unlocked the laundry room. I told them you were mentally unstable and dangerous. I was going to have them take you to a psych ward, but now you are going to jail for destruction of property." She marched to the door and threw it open. "Officer in here. She is violent. She just attacked my daughter." Two police officers walked into the kitchen. But they weren't the local patrol cops Patricia usually bribed. They were wearing tactical vests. Behind them walked a man in a sharp suit holding a briefcase. "Sasha Davis," the officer said, looking at me. I put the coffee pot down and held out my wrists, ready for the handcuffs. I knew this was part of the plan. I had to go down to go up. "Yes," I said softly. The officer did not pull out handcuffs. He looked at Patricia. "Ma'am, we received a report of a disturbance, but we also have a warrant to search these premises for evidence of insurance fraud related to the disappearance of a minor 20 years ago." Patricia's smug smile vanished instantly. "What? That is ridiculous. Who told you that?" The man in the suit stepped forward. "I am the district attorney, and we received an anonymous tip this morning from a very reliable source. We will need everyone to stay where they are." I looked at Patricia and saw the color drain from her face until she looked like a ghost. I looked at Tiffany, who was still clutching her ruined coffee-soaked bag, sobbing. And then I looked at Jamal, who was trying to hide behind his mother. I lowered my head to hide my smile. The Trojan horse was in, and the war had officially begun. The handcuffs clicked shut around my wrists with a cold, metallic sound that echoed through the silence of the kitchen. The police officer, a young man who looked apologetic, tightened them just enough to be uncomfortable. I kept my head down, letting my shoulders slump forward in a posture of defeat. It was a performance I had perfected over 3 years of living with the Davis family, but this time beneath the facade of the terrified servant, My heart was beating with the steady rhythm of a predator waiting to strike. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer recited, his voice a drone in the background. I did not look at him. I looked past him straight at Patricia. She was standing by the kitchen island, her arm draped protectively around a sobbing Tiffany. But there were no tears in Patricia's eyes. There was only triumph. A cruel, twisted smile played on her red lips. She looked like a queen who had finally crushed a peasant revolt. She thought she had won. She thought that by sending me to jail for destroying a handbag, she was silencing the only witness to her crimes. She had no idea that my arrest was the distraction needed for the district attorney to do his job in the other room. "Take her away," Patricia commanded, waving her hand as if dismissing a fly. "And make sure she stays in a cell for a long time. She is a danger to society. She is mentally unstable." The officer guided me toward the door. As I walked past Jamal, he refused to make eye contact. He stared intently at the floor tiles, cowardly and silent, just as he had been for our entire marriage. I was shoved into the back of the patrol car. The hard plastic seat was cold, and the smell of stale cigarette smoke and sweat filled the small cage. As the car pulled away, I watched the Davis mansion disappear in the rearview mirror. It stood tall and imposing, a fortress of lies. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the window. Let them have this moment, I thought. Let them think I am broken. The holding cell at the county jail was worse than I imagined. It was a concrete box painted a depressing shade of industrial gray, smelling of bleach and human misery. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a headache-inducing flicker. I sat on the thin metal bench, my knees pulled up to my chest, shivering in my thin, coffee-stained clothes. I had been processed like a common criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot. The humiliation of having my jewelry removed, not that I had much. Hours dragged by. I counted the cracks in the cinder block wall. I listened to a woman in the next cell screaming for a lawyer. I sat in silence, touching the spot on my jeans where the GPS tracker was sewn, reminding myself that Vivian Sterling was out there. She was watching. She was planning. "Sasha Davis. You have a visitor," a guard barked, unlocking the heavy steel door. I stood up, my legs stiff. Who would visit me? Vivian knew better than to blow my cover now. I was led into a small visitation room divided by a thick pane of scratched plexiglass. I sat down on the metal stool and looked up. It was Jamal. He was wearing a sharp navy blue suit, his hair perfectly groomed, looking every bit the successful businessman he pretended to be. He looked out of place in this dingy room, like a diamond in a sewer. But when he looked at me, his eyes weren't filled with love or concern. They were filled with pity and annoyance. He picked up the phone on the wall. I slowly picked up mine. "You look terrible, Sasha," he said, his voice tinny through the receiver. I did not answer. I just stared at him. "Look, I do not have much time," Jamal said, checking his expensive watch. "Mother is furious. Tiffany is talking about suing you for emotional distress. That bag was a limited edition, Sasha. Do you have any idea what you did?" "I poured coffee on leather, Jamal," I whispered. "I did not kill anyone. Unlike your mother." Jamal flinched. "Keep your voice down. You are talking crazy again. See, this is why the police arrested you. You are having a breakdown." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. He slid it through the metal slot at the bottom of the window. "What is this?" I asked, staring at the envelope. "It is your way out," Jamal said, leaning closer to the glass. "I convinced Mom not to press maximum charges. She is willing to drop the assault case. She will tell the police it was just a domestic accident. But you have to do something for us." I opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document titled Dissolution of Marriage, Divorce Papers. I flipped through the pages. My eyes scanned the legal jargon. It was brutal. I was waiving my right to alimony. I was waiving my right to any marital assets. I was agreeing to a restraining order that would keep me 500 feet away from the Davis estate and Sterling Pharmaceuticals. And buried in the fine print was a non-disclosure agreement forbidding me from ever speaking about the family business or Brianna Sterling. Sign it. Jamal urged, his voice softening into that fake sweetness he used when he wanted something. Sign it, and you walk out of here tonight. I will even give you $5,000 cash to help you start over somewhere else, somewhere far away. It is the best deal you are going to get, Sasha. I looked up from the papers. I looked at the man I had washed clothes for, cooked for, and loved for 3 years. I saw him for what he truly was, a spineless puppet. A man who would sell his wife for a new car and his mother's approval. You want me to leave with nothing? I said flatly. You came with nothing. Jamal shrugged. It is only fair. Come on, babe. Be reasonable. If you go to trial, you will lose. Mom has the best lawyers in the city. You have a coffee stain on your shirt. He pulled a pen from his pocket and tried to slide it through the slot, but it would not fit. He gestured for me to use the cheap plastic pen attached to the desk. Just sign it, Sasha. End this nightmare. For both of us. I picked up the plastic pen. Jamal smiled, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. He thought he had me. He thought I was the desperate orphan who would take crumbs just to survive. I brought the pen to the paper. But instead of signing, I jammed the pen into the paper, tearing through the signature line. Jamal's smile froze. What are you doing? I grabbed the thick stack of documents with both hands. I stood up, staring directly into Jamal's eyes. With one violent motion, I ripped the divorce papers in half. The sound of tearing paper was loud and satisfying in the small room. I ripped them again, and again, until the unfair settlement, the NDA, and the restraining order were nothing but confetti on the dirty floor. Sasha, have you lost your mind? Jamal shouted, standing up and banging his fist on the glass. You are throwing away your only chance. You are going to rot in here. I leaned into the glass, my breath fogging up the surface. My voice was low, dangerous, and completely devoid of fear. Go home, Jamal. Go home and tell your mother that her deal is trash. Tell her I am not signing anything. I dropped the torn pieces of paper on the floor. And Jamal? I added, my eyes burning into his. Tell Patricia to save her money. She is going to need it to hire the best criminal defense attorney in the state. Because I am not leaving this cell until I walk out as the owner of everything you think is yours. I hung up the phone. Jamal stood there, mouth open, looking at the shredded papers and then at me. He looked terrified. For the first time, he wasn't looking at Sasha the servant. He was looking at someone he did not recognize. I turned my back on him and signaled the guard. Take me back to my cell, I said. I have some planning to do. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind Jamal, leaving me alone in the silence of the visitation room. I stared at the torn pieces of the divorce papers scattered on the dirty linoleum floor. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally standing up to the man who had watched me drown for 3 years. I sat back on the cold metal stool, taking a deep breath, preparing myself for a long night in the cell. I expected them to come drag me back to the cage. I expected to sleep on a concrete slab. But 10 minutes later, the door flew open with a violence that made me jump. It wasn't a guard coming to mock me. It was the police chief himself. The man who had sneered at me during my booking photos, the man who had joked with Patricia Davis at the precinct fundraiser last year, was now standing in the doorway, looking like he had seen a ghost. His face was pale, beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He was holding his hat in his hands, wringing the brim nervously. Mrs. Davis, he stammered, his voice trembling. I mean, miss. There has been a mistake, a terrible misunderstanding. Please come with me immediately. I stood up slowly, confused. What is going on? I asked, keeping my voice low. Just come, please, he urged, stepping aside to let me pass. We are processing your release right now. I walked out of the visitation room and into the main precinct lobby. The atmosphere had shifted completely. Officers who had ignored me earlier were now pretending to be busy avoiding eye contact. Standing in the center of the room, looking like a shark in a tank of minnows, was a man in an immaculate charcoal suit. He was tall, silver-haired, and radiated the kind of power that money cannot buy. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a gold fountain pen in the other. He was looking at the booking sergeant with an expression of pure disdain. "This is unacceptable," the man said, his voice smooth but cutting. "You held a victim of domestic abuse in a cell for 4 hours without allowing her a phone call to her legal counsel. The Sterling family does not take kindly to incompetence. The Sterling family." My heart skipped a beat. This was Vivian's lawyer. The police chief rushed over. "Mr. Thorne, please, we followed standard procedure based on Mrs. Davis's statement. We did not know who she was connected to." Mr. Thorne turned his cold eyes to me. His expression softened instantly. "Miss Sasha. My name is Edward Thorne. I am the head of legal counsel for Sterling Pharmaceuticals. Your bail has been posted. The charges are being reviewed, and I assure you by tomorrow morning, this entire station will be under internal investigation if you are not treated with the utmost respect from this second forward." He turned back to the chief. "You have her belongings." "Yes, sir. Right here," the chief said, handing over a plastic bag containing my cheap earrings and the GPS tracker Vivian had sewn into my jeans. Mr. Thorne took the bag and handed it to me gently. "The car is outside." I took the bag. I looked at the chief. I looked at the officers. "Apologize to her." Mr. Thorne commanded, not raising his voice, but the order was absolute. "I am sorry, Mrs. Davis," the chief mumbled, looking at his shoes. "We made a mistake. I did not say a word." I just nodded and walked out the double glass doors into the humid Atlanta night. The air tasted sweet. Parked right at the curb in a no parking zone that the police were too scared to enforce was the black Rolls-Royce Phantom. The back door opened before I even reached it. Vivian Sterling was sitting inside, illuminated by the soft glow of the reading light. She looked anxious, biting her lip, but when she saw me, relief washed over her face. I slid into the leather seat. The door closed, sealing out the noise of the city. "Are you okay?" Vivian asked, reaching for my hand. "Did they hurt you?" "I am fine," I said, realizing it was the truth. For the first time, I felt powerful. "I saw fear in their eyes, Vivian. Not because of me, but because of you." Vivian squeezed my hand. "Power is a tool, Brianna, and now it is your turn to wield it. But we have to make a choice right now. We can drive to my estate. You can take a hot bath, sleep in a bed made of silk, and never see those people again. We can fight them from the outside." She paused, looking deep into my eyes. "Or you can go back. You can finish what you started. But I need you to know that if you walk back through those doors, you are walking into the lion's den alone. I can protect you legally, but I cannot protect your heart from what they might say." I looked out the tinted window. I thought about Jamal's face when I tore the papers. I thought about Patricia's smug smile. I touched the pocket of my jeans where the recording pen was hidden. "If I don't go back, they get away with it," I said softly. "They lose some money maybe, but they don't pay for the 20 years they stole." I turned to Vivian. "Take me back to the house. I am ready for the greatest performance of my life." Vivian nodded slowly. A look of fierce pride burned in her eyes. She reached into the console and pulled out a small vial of liquid. "Put a few drops of this in your eyes. It will make them red and puffy. You need to look like you have been crying for hours. You need to look broken so they never see the blade coming." I took the drops. I tilted my head back. "I am ready, Mother. Let's go get them." The Rolls-Royce glided silently through the streets of Buckhead, carrying me back to hell. But this time, I wasn't the prisoner. I was the warden. The driveway of the Davis estate loomed in the darkness. I had the driver drop me off just outside the gate so I could walk up the long path, adding to the effect of my defeat. I rubbed my eyes until they stung. I hunched my shoulders. I practiced the tremor in my hands. By the time I rang the doorbell, I looked like a woman who had lost everything. It took 5 minutes for someone to answer. Finally, the heavy wood door creaked open. It was Patricia. She was wearing a silk sleeping gown and holding a glass of wine. When she saw me standing on the porch, she did not look surprised. She looked annoyed. "So the prodigal rat returns," she sneered, blocking the entrance. "I thought you would be enjoying prison food by now. How did you get out?" I fell to my knees. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, forcing my body to bow to this monster. "Please, mother," I sobbed, my voice cracking perfectly. I called a loan shark. A friend from the old neighborhood. I borrowed $5,000 at 50% interest just to pay the bail. I had nowhere else to go. The police said I could not leave the state. "Please do not throw me out. I will do anything." Patricia looked down at me, swirling her wine. She savored the moment. She loved seeing me on my knees. It fed her sick ego. Anything she asked, raising an eyebrow. Anything I whispered, she stepped back. "Get inside, before the neighbors see you and think we run a shelter." I crawled into the foyer. Tiffany and Jamal were sitting in the living room. Tiffany looked up from her phone, her eyes narrowing. "Why is she here?" Tiffany shrieked. "She owes me $20,000 for my bag. She is here to work it off," Patricia said, closing the door and locking it. "Stand up, Sasha." I stood up, keeping my head lowered, clutching my hands together to hide the fact that I was gripping the silver pen in my pocket. I quietly twisted the cap, feeling the tiny vibration that meant it was recording. Patricia walked over to the antique desk in the corner and pulled out a document. It wasn't the divorce papers. It was something she had typed up herself. "If you want to stay in this house, if you want us to drop the charges so you don't go to prison for 10 years, you are going to sign this," Patricia said, slapping the paper onto the coffee table. I walked over and looked at it. It was a contract. Voluntary indenture of service. It stated that I, Sasha Davis, agreed to work as a live and domestic servant for the Davis family for a period of 10 years to repay debts incurred from property damage and emotional distress. No salary, no days off. Sleeping quarters in the basement storage room. This is slavery," I stammered, looking at Jamal. Jamal looked away. "It is a plea deal, Sasha. It is better than jail. Just sign it." "You have a choice," Patricia said, walking behind me and whispering in my ear. "You can sign this and you have a roof over your head. Or you can walk out that door and I will call the DA personally and tell him you threatened to kill me." Who are they going to believe? The pillar of the community, or the orphan with a criminal record? I looked at the pen on the table. I picked it up. My hand trembled, but not from fear. I needed her to say it. I needed her to admit why she hated me so much. "Why do you hate me?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "I have tried so hard to be a good daughter. Why do you treat me like I am less than human?" Patricia laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Because you are less than human, Sasha. You are a stray dog I let into my house. Is it because I remind you of someone I pushed taking a risky step? Is it because of Vivian Sterling?" The room went deadly silent. Tiffany gasped. Jamal froze. Patricia grabbed my face, digging her nails into my cheeks. "Do not say that name in this house." "You are scared of her," I whispered. "You are scared because you know what you did." Patricia's eyes went wide with rage. She leaned in close, her face inches from mine, her wine breath hot on my skin. She was so angry she forgot to be careful. "You think I am scared of that weak woman?" she hissed. "I won. I took the only thing she ever loved. I plucked you right out of that park while she was busy signing autographs. I watched her cry on the news for years. And the best part, I turned her precious princess into my personal slave." She shoved me back. "You are nothing, Sasha. You are just a trophy of my victory over Vivian. Now sign the paper, or I will finish what I started 20 years ago and make you disappear for good." I stumbled back against the table. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would explode. She said it. She admitted it. I looked down at the contract. I looked at the pen in my hand. The little red light was hidden, but I knew it was blinking. I knew Vivian was listening in the van down the street. I knew the lawyers were recording every syllable. I bent down and signed the paper. Sasha Davis. I stood up and capped the pen. Good girl. Patricia smiled, snatching the paper. Now get to the basement. You have an early start tomorrow. I turned and walked toward the basement door. I did not cry. I did not beg. I walked into the darkness of the cellar with a smile on my face. Because I knew that while I was sleeping on a cot tonight, Patricia Davis had just signed her own death warrant. The confession was recorded. The trap was sprung. And tomorrow the world would know that the Davis family empire was built on a kidnapping. The morning of the merger party arrived with a chaotic energy that vibrated through the floors of the Davis estate. Florists were screaming at caterers in the hallway. Valets were setting up cones in the driveway to receive the fleet of luxury cars. And I was standing in the laundry room, staring at a pile of blue synthetic fur that looked like a nightmare. Tiffany stood in the doorway holding a giant fiberglass head with frozen cartoonish eyes and a permanent creepy smile. "Put it on," she commanded, shoving the heavy head into my chest. But why, I asked, keeping my voice small and trembling though my hands were steady. Because I said so. Tiffany snapped, checking her reflection in the window. Today is the most important day in the history of this family. We have investors coming from all over the world. We have press. We have the mayor. Do you think I want them to see you wandering around in your rags, looking like a Depression-era orphan? No. You are going to be the party mascot. You are going to be Mr. Blue, the Blue Horizon Bear. You will walk around, wave at people, and keep your mouth shut. If you take that head off for 1 second, if anyone sees your face, I will throw you out on the street before you can blink. Now get dressed. I slowly stepped into the suit. It smelled of stale plastic and factory chemicals. It was thick, heavy, and suffocatingly hot. As I zipped up the back, I felt like I was being sealed into a coffin. But as I placed the giant bear head over my own, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Inside the suit, I was invisible. Inside the suit, I wasn't Sasha the servant. I was a ghost haunting my own life. Tiffany clapped her hands, delighted by my humiliation. "Perfect," she laughed. "You look better than you have in years. Now go out there and be useful for once. Don't speak to anyone, just wave." I waddled out into the garden, the heavy feet of the costume thumping against the marble patio. The party was in full swing. It was an obscene display of wealth. There were ice sculptures, a string quartet playing pop songs, and servers passing around trays of caviar. I saw Patricia standing near the fountain wearing a gold dress that was far too tight, laughing loudly with a group of bankers. She looked triumphant. She thought she had won. She had no idea that the giant blue bear standing 10 feet away was recording every word she said with a silver pen hidden inside the fur. I walked through the crowd waving my paw mechanically. Guests laughed and took photos with me, treating me like a prop. I felt a surge of power. They did not see me, which meant I could go anywhere. I could see everything. I watched Tiffany berating a waiter for not putting enough ice in her wine. I watched Jamal trying to impress a group of investors who clearly looked bored by him. They were all so busy playing their parts in this farce that they did not notice the bear slowly drifting away from the festivities. I made my way toward the side entrance of the house, the one used by the catering staff. I waited until the coast was clear, then slipped inside. The noise of the party faded instantly, replaced by the cool silence of the air-conditioned hallway. I moved quickly despite the bulk of the suit. I knew exactly where I was going. Patricia's private study, the place where she kept all her secrets. I reached the heavy oak door and tried the handle. Locked. Of course, but I lived in this house. I knew where the spare key was. Patricia was paranoid, but she was also predictable. She kept a spare key hidden inside the hollow base of a decorative Greek statue in the hallway. My giant paw fumbled with the statue, lifting it carefully. There it was, a small brass key. I unlocked the door and slipped inside, closing it softly behind me. The study smelled of leather and Patricia's overpowering perfume. I walked over to the large portrait of Patricia that hung behind her desk. It was a ridiculous painting, making her look like royalty. I knew from cleaning this room for 3 years that there was a wall safe behind it. I had seen her open it once when she thought I wasn't looking. I gripped the frame of the painting with my paws and swung it open. There it was. A heavy steel safe embedded in the wall. My heart raced. This was it. Inside this metal box were the ledgers, the fake birth certificates, the proof that she had paid off the nurse to kidnap me, the proof that she had been stealing from the company accounts to fund Tiffany's lifestyle. I reached out to touch the keypad but stopped. It required a 6-digit code. I froze. I did not have the code. I tried the obvious ones. Patricia's birthday. Error. Tiffany's birthday. Error. Jamal's birthday. Error. The red light blinked, mocking me. I had one attempt left before the system would lock down and send an alert to Patricia's phone. Think Sasha, think I whispered inside the echo chamber of the bear head. What number matters to her? What number does she cherish? Suddenly I heard the sound of the doorknob turning. Panic surged through me like an electric shock. I couldn't get out. The only exit was the door that was currently opening. There was nowhere to hide. I was a 6-foot-tall blue bear. I scanned the room frantically, the heavy velvet drapes by the window. It was my only chance. I dove behind the curtains just as the door clicked open. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath, hoping the bulk of the costume wouldn't give me away. 2 people walked into the room. I expected Patricia, or maybe Tiffany looking for a place to touch up her makeup, but the voice that spoke was male. "Hurry up, lock the door," Jamal whispered. I peeked through the tiny slit in the velvet curtains. Through the mesh eyes of my mask, I saw my husband. He looked flushed, excited, but he wasn't alone. Walking in behind him was a woman in a slinky red dress. I recognized her instantly. It was Chloe, Tiffany's best friend, the maid of honor at our wedding. The woman who had eaten dinner at my table and called me sweetie while treating me like a waitress. Chloe giggled, pressing her back against the door as Jamal locked it. "You are bad, Jamal. Your wife is somewhere at this party, isn't she?" Jamal laughed, walking toward her. He grabbed her by the waist. "Sasha. Who cares about her? She is probably scrubbing a toilet somewhere or hiding in the basement. She is a nobody, Chloe. You know that." He kissed her neck. I watched my stomach turning. It wasn't just the affair, it was the casual cruelty, the way he dismissed my entire existence while betraying me in his mother's office. "But Jamal," Chloe whispered, pulling back slightly. "What about the money? Tiffany said you guys are broke until this merger goes through." Jamal smirked, walking over to the desk. He sat on the edge of it, looking confident. "That is the best part. Mom has a plan. Once we get the insurance payout from Sasha, we are set for life." "Insurance payout?" Chloe asked. "But you only get life insurance if she dies." Jamal shrugged. "Or if she disappears, or has a tragic accident. Mom says we just need her to sign the papers and then she becomes a liability. We are going to be rich, baby. And I am going to dump her back in the gutter where I found her." I stood there in the dark, encased in the stifling heat of the bear suit, listening to my husband plan my disposal. Tears streamed down my face, soaking the inside of the mask. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of pure, unadulterated hatred. Jamal stood up and walked toward the portrait. My breath hitched. He was coming to the safe. "Mom told me to grab some cash for the after party," he said. He reached out and swung the painting open. I watched, memorizing every movement of his fingers. He punched in the code: 19980, April 4th, 1998. My blood ran cold. That wasn't a birthday. That wasn't an anniversary. That was the date I was kidnapped from the park. That was the date Patricia stole me. That was the code to her fortune. She used the day she destroyed my life as the key to her wealth. The safe beeped and clicked open. Jamal reached in and grabbed a stack of cash. He laughed, tossing a bundle to Chloe. "Let's go spend it, babe." They kissed again, then unlocked the door and left, leaving the safe wide open. I stepped out from behind the curtain. The giant blue bear stood in the center of the room, looking at the open safe. I walked over. Inside, stacked neatly next to the cash, were the black ledgers. And right on top, a yellowed file folder with the name Brianna Sterling written on it. I reached out with my paw. I had everything I needed. The game was over. I held my breath behind the heavy velvet curtains, my heart hammering against the ribs of the stifling mascot suit. Through the narrow slit in the fabric, I watched my husband Jamal lean against the mahogany desk. He was holding a stack of cash he had just pulled from the safe, waving it in front of Chloe's greedy face. She giggled, tracing a finger down his chest. "But Jamal," she purred. "How did you know the code? Your mother said she changes it every week to keep the staff out." Jamal laughed, a sound that used to make me smile, but now made my stomach turn. "It is a joke, really. Mom has a sick sense of humor." She set the code to Sasha's birthday. April 4th. Chloe looked confused. "Why her birthday? I thought your mom hated her." Jamal smirked, stuffing the cash into his pocket. "She does. But she calls it her lucky day." It was the day Sasha showed up at our door from the foster agency 20 years ago. Mom says it is the anniversary of the day we got a lifetime slave for free. So 199804. Easy to remember. The day we stopped doing our own dishes. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Tears of rage blurred my vision inside the plastic mask. They did not even see me as a person. To them, my birthday wasn't a celebration of life. It was the anniversary of their acquisition of a piece of property. I was just a vacuum cleaner that breathed. Chloe squealed, kissing him on the cheek. "You are terrible. I love it. Now let's go. People will wonder where we are." They walked out of the room, Jamal smacking her rear as they crossed the threshold. The door clicked shut, and the lock turned. I waited 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then I burst out from behind the curtains. The heat inside the suit was unbearable, sweat pouring down my back, but my mind was ice cold. I marched to the safe. The door was still ajar where Jamal had left it. I reached in with my clumsy blue paw, grabbed the stack of black ledgers, and threw them onto the desk. I pulled off one of the paw gloves, my hand shaking as I reached for the miniature spy camera Vivian had sewn into the suit's chest pocket. I opened the first ledger. It was a graveyard of financial crimes, shell companies, fake invoices, bribes to city officials. And there on page 50 was a monthly payment of $10,000 to a private nursing facility listed under patient 0. I flipped the page. A wire transfer receipt to a Cayman Islands account with the memo insurance settlement, B. Sterling. "Got you," I whispered. I snapped photos of every page. Click, click, click. Every image was a nail in their coffin. I shoved the ledgers back into the safe and closed it, but I kept the yellow file folder labeled Brianna Sterling. I folded it and stuffed it inside the suit against my chest. I turned to leave, sliding my paw glove back on. I reached for the doorknob. Suddenly, the handle turned from the outside. I froze. I had forgotten to lock it after Jamal left. The door swung open. Standing there was Tiffany. She looked frantic, scanning the floor. "Where is it?" she muttered. "I know I lost it in here, my diamond earring." She looked up and saw me, a 6-foot blue bear standing in the middle of her mother's private office. Her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Blue," she snapped, "what the hell are you doing in here? I told you to stay in the garden. This is a restricted area." I did not move. I could not speak. If I spoke, she would recognize my voice. I tried to edge toward the side door that led to the kitchen. "Stop," Tiffany commanded, stepping into the room and blocking my path. "Why are you shaking? And why is the painting on the wall crooked?" She looked past me. She saw the safe. She saw the slight gap where I hadn't closed it fully. Her face went pale, then red with anger. "You were robbing us!" she shrieked. "You are one of the catering staff, aren't you? I knew you people were thieves." She lunged at me. "Take that mask off. I want to see your face before I call the police." I backed away, waving my paws, trying to act like a confused mascot. But Tiffany was relentless. She grabbed the blue fur at my chest. She yanked hard. "Take it off," she screamed. She reached up and grabbed the ears of the giant bear head. I tried to push her away, but the suit was too bulky. With one violent tug, she ripped the Velcro seal loose. The heavy head came off. My sweaty, matted hair fell around my face. I gasped for air, blinking in the sudden light. Tiffany stood there holding the bear head, her mouth dropping open in shock. She stared at me. I stared back. The silence stretched for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity. "Sasha," she whispered, her voice trembling. I dropped the act. I stood up straight, my eyes blazing. "Hello, Tiffany." "You?" she screamed, throwing the bear head at me. "You little rat! You were spying on us!" She scanned the room and saw the open safe. "You saw the ledgers! You know!" She looked at the heavy brass letter opener on the desk. Her eyes went wild. She lunged for it. "I am not letting you ruin this," she screeched. "I will kill you myself." She raised the sharp metal blade. Adrenaline exploded in my veins. I wasn't the weak little servant anymore. I was fighting for my life. As she brought the weapon down, I sidestepped. The thick padding of the suit protected my shoulder from the blow. I grabbed her wrist. She was strong, fueled by desperation, but I was fueled by 20 years of stolen life. I twisted her arm. She dropped the letter opener with a cry of pain. I shoved her backward. She stumbled, her high heels catching on the rug, and she fell hard into the open walk-in closet where Patricia kept her winter coats. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the closet door shut and turned the key in the lock. "Let me out!" Tiffany screamed, pounding on the door. "Mom? Jamal, help! The bear is attacking me!" I snapped the key off in the lock so she couldn't pick it. "Scream all you want, Tiffany," I said, breathless. "The soundproofing in this room is excellent. Your mother made sure of that so no one could hear her illegal deals." I turned and ran. I burst out the side door into the service hallway. The bear suit was slowing me down. I unzipped the back and peeled it off, stepping out of the blue fur like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. I left the empty shell of the mascot in a heap on the floor. I was wearing nothing but a tank top and shorts underneath, but I didn't care. I sprinted to the back exit. A black van was waiting by the loading dock. The side door slid open. Vivian was there holding a garment bag. "You have 3 minutes," she said, her eyes scanning my face. "Did you get it?" I tapped the yellow folder against my chest. "Everything." Vivian smiled, a predatory grin. "Good, put this on." She handed me the garment bag. Inside was a dress that looked like it was woven from emeralds and starlight. It was a power suit disguised as a gown. I changed in the back of the van while Vivian fixed my hair. She wiped the sweat from my face and applied a coat of red lipstick. "You are not Sasha anymore," she whispered, placing a diamond necklace around my neck. It was heavy, cool, and magnificent. "You are Brianna Sterling. Go take back your kingdom." I stepped out of the van. I walked around the side of the house to the grand main entrance. I could hear the applause from the garden. The ceremony was starting. I walked through the French doors. The garden was packed with hundreds of guests. On a raised stage decorated with white roses, Patricia Davis stood at a podium. She looked radiant, holding a gold pen. Next to her stood a man in a gray suit, the representative from Blue Horizon Ventures. "Thank you all for coming." Patricia beamed into the microphone. "Today marks a new chapter for the Davis Group. This merger will ensure our legacy for generations to come." She looked down at the contract. She lowered the pen to sign. I stepped out onto the marble terrace overlooking the garden. The setting sun hit my emerald dress, making me glow. "Stop," I shouted. My voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Patricia froze. She looked up. She squinted, blinded by the sun behind me. "Who is that?" she asked, annoyed. The representative from Blue Horizon Ventures, who had been about to sign, suddenly pulled the contract away. He looked up at me and bowed his head slightly. Patricia looked at him confused. "Mr. Thorne, what are you doing? Let me sign." Mr. Thorne capped his pen and stepped back. "I am sorry, Mrs. Davis. I cannot allow you to sign this." "Why not?" Patricia demanded, her voice rising. "I am the owner of this company." Mr. Thorne pointed at me as I began to descend the grand staircase, every eye in the garden fixed on me. "No, you are not," he said loudly. "We only sign with the rightful owner, and she has just arrived." The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn of the Davis estate. The garden was bathed in the warm glow of string lights and the flash of cameras. Patricia stood at the podium, a pen hovering over the merger contract, a triumphant smile plastered on her face. She was seconds away from signing away her company to a shell corporation she thought was her savior. But fate and a very angry daughter-in-law had other plans. Suddenly, with a loud clank, the main breaker for the garden lights was thrown. The string lights died. The uplighting on the trees went black. The only illumination came from the moonlight and the confused glow of cell phone screens. A murmur of panic rippled through the hundreds of wealthy guests. Patricia tapped the microphone, annoyed. "Someone get the generator on," she barked into the darkness. "What is the meaning of this incompetence?" Before anyone could answer, a single high-powered spotlight cut through the darkness. It did not shine on the stage. It did not shine on Patricia. It shone directly on the French doors at the top of the grand staircase leading down to the garden. The doors swung open slowly, dramatically. A silhouette stepped into the beam of light. A hush fell over the crowd. The figure paused at the top of the stairs, letting the light catch the fabric of her dress. It was a gown of deep, shimmering emerald green, the exact color of money, the exact color of the Sterling family crest. I began to walk down the marble stairs. My heels clicked with a rhythmic, dangerous sound that echoed in the silence. The dress hugged my body, flowing like liquid jade with every step. Around my neck sat a diamond necklace so large it caught every stray beam of light, scattering rainbows across the stunned faces of the guests. My hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun, cascaded in perfect glossy waves down my back. I wore red lipstick that looked like a war paint. I did not look down. I looked straight at Patricia. At the bottom of the stairs near the VIP table, Jamal was holding a glass of champagne. He looked up. His eyes widened. He blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. He saw a woman who looked vaguely like his wife, but this woman held her head high. This woman radiated power. This woman was terrifying. His hand went limp. The crystal flute slipped from his fingers and shattered on the stone patio. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet garden. "Who is that?" a guest whispered loudly. "Is that a movie star?" Patricia squinted against the glare of the spotlight. She put a hand to her forehead to shield her eyes. She saw the dress first, then the diamonds. She did not recognize me. To her, Sasha was a servant in rags, a creature of the basement. She could not comprehend that the queen descending the stairs was the same girl she had kicked that morning. "Security," Patricia hissed into the microphone. "Remove this woman. She is interrupting the ceremony." But the security guards did not move. They had been replaced an hour ago by Vivian's private team. They stood like statues, arms crossed, watching me descend. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked through the parted crowd. People stepped back, awestruck by the sheer force of my presence. I walked straight up the steps to the stage. Mr. Thorne, the lawyer who had stopped Patricia from signing, stepped aside and bowed his head respectfully. Patricia looked at him, then at me. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait," she murmured, realization slowly dawning on her face like a cold sweat. You look like—" I reached out and plucked the microphone from her trembling hand. I turned to face the crowd of investors, bankers, and socialites. I smiled, but it was a smile that promised destruction. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice smooth and commanding, amplified by the speakers. I apologize for the dramatic entrance and the delay. I got held up inside the house. I was busy taking care of a rather large, nasty rat that was hiding in the closet. A few people chuckled nervously. Patricia's face went deadly pale. She knew exactly which rat I was talking about. She looked at the house, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "What are you doing?" she whispered off mic. "Get off my stage, Sasha. You are fired. You are homeless." I laughed softly into the microphone. "Oh, Patricia, you cannot fire the person who owns the stage." Before Patricia could process my words, a piercing scream shattered the tension. "Stop her! Arrest her! She is a thief!" The crowd turned toward the house. Tiffany came stumbling out of the side door. She was a disaster. Her hair was matted with sweat. Her expensive dress was torn at the shoulder from trying to break down the closet door, and she was missing a shoe. She limped into the spotlight, looking like a deranged banshee. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "That woman is a criminal!" Tiffany shrieked, gasping for breath as she ran toward the stage. "She broke into the safe. She assaulted me. She stole that dress, arrest her." The guests gasped. Whispers of thief and assault rippled through the garden. This was the scandal of the decade. Patricia regained her composure, seizing the moment. "You heard my daughter," Patricia shouted, pointing at me. "This woman is a former mental patient we took in out of charity. She has clearly had a psychotic break. She has stolen jewelry and broken into our home." Police. Do your job. Two uniformed officers stepped forward from the shadows, but they didn't walk toward me. They walked toward the stage steps and stood there facing the crowd, protecting me. Tiffany climbed onto the stage, trying to grab me. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. "Tiffany," I said into the microphone, my voice calm and bored, "you are embarrassing yourself, and you are ruining the carpet." Tiffany froze, panting. You are going to jail, Sasha. Give me back my mother's necklace." I touched the diamonds at my throat. "This is not your mother's necklace, Tiffany. This is a sterling." And as for being a thief, I turned to Mr. Thorne. He handed me a leather portfolio. I opened it and pulled out a document stamped with the official seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission. "I did not steal anything," I addressed the crowd, holding up the paper. "This morning, my holding company purchased 51% of the outstanding debt of the Davis Group. Due to the default clauses in your loan agreements which your mother ignored to buy fancy cars, that debt has converted into equity." I turned to Patricia, who was gripping the podium for support. "I did not steal your company, Patricia. I bought it. It was a hostile takeover, and I got it for a bargain price because your financial mismanagement is frankly embarrassing." Patricia shook her head violently. "No, that is impossible. You have no money. You are a penniless orphan." "You scrub my floors, I have plenty of money," I said coldly. "You just never checked whose bank account I had access to." Patricia looked confused. Who is backing you?" From the shadows of the wings, a figure stepped forward. Vivian Sterling walked into the light. She was wearing a white suit that glowed in the night. She looked regal, terrifying, and undeniably powerful. She walked over and stood right next to me. The crowd gasped. The sound was like a vacuum sucking the air out of the garden. They looked at Vivian. Then they looked at me. We had the same eyes, the same nose, the same jawline. The resemblance was not just strong, it was undeniable. We looked like reflections of each other across time. Patricia made a choking sound. She stumbled back, knocking over a flower arrangement. She looked from Vivian to me, the color draining from her face, until she looked like a corpse. The nightmare she had been running from for 20 years had finally caught her. Vivian put her arm around my waist. She looked at the crowd, then at Patricia. "You asked who is backing her?" Vivian said, her voice projecting without a microphone. "I am." I stepped forward, closing the distance between me and Patricia. I looked deep into the eyes of the woman who had tormented me, starved me, and tried to erase me. "My name is not Sasha," I declared, my voice ringing out with the force of a gavel sentence. I saw Jamal in the front row, his mouth hanging open. I saw Tiffany trembling in her torn dress. My name is Brianna Sterling, and I am taking back everything you stole. You are a liar and a fraud. Patricia screamed, her voice cracking under the strain of her desperation. She gripped the podium so hard her knuckles turned white, looking out at the sea of confused faces in the garden. Do not listen to her. She is a mentally unstable servant we fired for theft. She has had plastic surgery to look like Vivian. It is a trick. It is all a sick, twisted trick to destroy my reputation. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her eyes wild with panic. Security, she shrieked. Why are you just standing there? Get this imposter off my stage. Arrest her for trespassing. The crowd murmured, looking back and forth between the hysterical woman at the podium and the calm, regal figure standing next to her. For a second, just a split second, I saw doubt in their eyes. Patricia was a master manipulator. She had spent 20 years building a fortress of lies, and she knew exactly how to play the victim. I did not raise my voice. I did not scream back. I simply reached into the pocket of my emerald dress and pulled out the sleek silver Mont Blanc pen. Patricia froze. Her eyes locked onto the pen. She recognized it. It was the pen she had handed me just 24 hours ago to sign the slavery contract. Do you remember this, Mother? I asked. My voice amplified clearly by the microphone I was holding. You gave this to me last night. You thought it was just a pen, but it was actually a high-fidelity listening device connected directly to the cloud servers of Sterling Security. Patricia lunged for me. Give me that, she snarled. Vivian stepped in front of me, blocking her path with a glare that could freeze lava. Patricia stumbled back, terrified of the woman she had robbed. I walked over to the sound technician's booth at the side of the stage. The tech, a young man who looked terrified, backed away. I plugged the pen's USB connector into the main audio console. Let's hear what the pillar of the community really thinks about family, I said. I pressed play. A screech of feedback pierced the air, followed by absolute silence. Then Patricia's voice boomed through the massive garden speakers loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. It was unmistakably her. The tone was cruel, arrogant, and drunk on power. You think I am scared of that weak woman the recording played? I won. I took the only thing she ever loved. I plucked you right out of that park while she was busy signing autographs. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the garden. Patricia put her hands over her ears. No, she screamed. Turn it off. It is fake. It is AI. But the recording continued, relentless and damning. I watched her cry on the news for years. And the best part, I turned her precious princess into my personal slave. You are nothing, Sasha. You are just a trophy of my victory over Vivian. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavier than the humid Atlanta air. Every single person in that garden was staring at Patricia Davis with a mixture of horror and disgust. The investors from Blue Horizon looked sick. The mayor, who was standing in the front row, slowly backed away from the stage. Patricia stood alone in the center of the spotlight. She looked small. She looked stripped of all her armor. But I wasn't done yet. That was the confession for kidnapping, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Now let's talk about the money. I signaled to Mr. Thorne. He nodded and tapped his tablet. Behind us, the massive LED screen that had been displaying the Davis Group logo flickered. The image changed. It was no longer a logo. It was a blown-up high-definition photograph of a page from a black ledger. Patricia turned around and saw the screen. She let out a strangled cry. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, pointing at the screen. You are looking at the internal accounting records of the Davis Group, records that were kept in a safe hidden behind a portrait of Patricia herself. The image zoomed in. Here we see a wire transfer of $50,000 to a shell company in the Cayman Islands dated the same day the employee pension fund was reported empty. The screen changed again. And here I continued, my voice hardening. We see a recurring payment to a private nursing facility for a patient 0. This is the bribe money paid to the nurse who helped facilitate my kidnapping 20 years ago. The crowd erupted. People were shouting. Flashbulbs were going off like a strobe light storm. Tiffany, who had been trying to sneak off the stage, froze as her face appeared on the screen next. It was a credit card statement. And here is the corporate account being used to purchase a $20,000 Hermes bag listed as office supplies, I noted dryly. That is enough, a booming voice shouted. The garden gates burst open. A team of FBI agents in tactical gear swarmed into the venue. They did not wait for an invitation. They marched straight down the center aisle, pushing aside the stunned guests. Patricia looked at the agents. She looked at the screen. She looked at me. The reality of her situation finally crashed down on her. There was no way out. No lie could cover this. No bribe could fix this. Fix. You ruined everything, she screamed at me, her face contorting into a mask of pure hatred. You ungrateful little rat. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Make sure the jury hears that threat, Vivian said coldly to the lead agent as he stepped onto the stage. Patricia Davis, you are under arrest for kidnapping, wire fraud, embezzlement, and human trafficking, the agent announced, grabbing Patricia's wrist and twisting it behind her back. The click of the handcuffs was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was louder than the applause, louder than the music. It was the sound of justice. Get your hands off me, Patricia shrieked, struggling against the agent. Do you know who I am? I am Patricia Davis. I own this town. Not anymore, I whispered. Next to her, another agent grabbed Tiffany. Me. Why me? Tiffany wailed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. I did not do anything. I just wanted a bag. Mom, tell them. You are an accessory to fraud and beneficiary of stolen funds, the agent said, cuffing her. As they dragged Patricia and Tiffany off the stage, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one offered to help them. The friends who had drunk their champagne and eaten their caviar turned their backs. Patricia continued to scream curses, her heels dragging on the marble steps, leaving scuff marks that would be there long after she was in a prison cell. I stood on the stage watching them disappear into the back of the armored SUV. Vivian came up beside me and took my hand. We did it, she whispered. But I wasn't done. I felt a pair of eyes burning into me. I turned my head slowly. Jamal was standing at the foot of the stairs. He hadn't moved. He hadn't run. He was frozen in a state of absolute terror. He looked at his mother being hauled away. He looked at the evidence on the screen. And then he looked at me. He looked at the wife he had betrayed. The woman he had planned to discard like trash. His face was pale sweat dripping down his temple. He tried to smile, a weak, pathetic twitch of his lips. He took a step toward the stage, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. Babe, he mouthed silently. I stared down at him from the height of the stage. The spotlight caught the diamonds around my neck, making me look like a goddess of vengeance. I did not smile. I did not blink. I just looked at him with the cold indifference of a stranger. The police had taken the monsters. But the cockroach was still on the patio, and I had a very big boot. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers finally faded into the distance, taking with them the screaming chaos that was Patricia and Tiffany Davis. The garden, once filled with Atlanta's elite, was now a wasteland of overturned chairs, shattered champagne flutes, and trampled flowers. The silence that descended was heavy and thick, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of traffic. The guests had fled the moment the handcuffs came out, eager to distance themselves from the scandal. I stood alone on the marble terrace, the cool night air hitting my bare arms, but I did not feel cold. I felt a burning heat in my chest, a mixture of adrenaline and finality. Vivian had gone to the police station to ensure the charges stuck, leaving me to handle the last piece of trash remaining on the property. I looked down the grand staircase. Jamal was still there. He had not moved from the spot where he had watched his mother being dragged away. He stood amidst the ruin of the party, looking small and pathetic in his expensive suit. When he saw me looking at him, he seemed to wake up from a trance. He straightened his tie, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and began to walk up the stairs toward me. His steps were slow and hesitant at first, but as he got closer, I saw the mask slip back into place. The charm, the fake vulnerability, the look he used to give me when he wanted me to iron his shirts or lend him money. He reached the top of the stairs and stopped a few feet away from me. He looked at my emerald dress, at the diamonds around my neck, and then into my eyes. Slowly, dramatically, he dropped to his knees. He reached out for my hand, but I stepped back, letting his fingers grasp at empty air. Sasha, he choked out, forcing tears into his eyes. Oh God, Sasha, I am so sorry. I did not know. You have to believe me. I was terrified of her. Mom, she controlled everything. She made me do it. He looked up at me, his face twisted in a performance of agony. I wanted to tell you, baby. I swear I did. Every day I wanted to tell you the truth about who you were, but she threatened to cut me off. She threatened to hurt you. I was trying to protect you. That is why I stayed. To keep you safe from her. He crawled forward on his knees, scraping his suit pants on the stone. I love you, Sasha. You know I do. We are husband and wife. We took vows. For better or worse, right? Well, the worst is over now. She is gone. It is just us. We can finally be happy. We can run this company together, you and me. The power couple we were always meant to be. I watched him grovel. I watched the man I had spent 3 years serving, the man I had cried over, the man I had thought was my soulmate. And I felt nothing. No love, no hate. Just a profound, icy disgust. It was like looking at a cockroach that had learned to speak. I let him finish his speech. I let him pour out every lie he could think of. When he finally stopped panting slightly, waiting for me to pull him into a hug, and forgive him like the foolish Sasha of the past would have done, I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You loved me. I repeated, my voice flat. You were protecting me. Yes, Jamal nodded eagerly, hope lighting up his eyes. Yes, baby. Always. I took a step closer to him, towering over his kneeling form. Was that why you were in the office with Chloe today? I asked softly. The color drained from Jamal's face so fast he looked like he might faint. His mouth opened but no sound came out. I was there, Jamal. I continued, my voice hardening into steel. I was the blue bear, standing 5 feet away from you. I heard you tell her that I was a nobody. I heard you tell her that you were going to dump me back in the gutter once I signed the insurance papers. I heard you laugh about how you got a lifetime slave for free on my birthday. Jamal began to shake. His lies were crumbling, turning to dust in his mouth. That was just talk, he stammered. I was just telling Chloe what she wanted to hear so she wouldn't suspect anything. It was part of the act, Sasha. I did it for us. I looked at him with pure contempt. You are pathetic. You do not love me, Jamal. You never did. You do not even know what love is. You love the way I cleaned up your messes. You love the way I made you look successful when you were failing. You love the convenience. I leaned down, bringing my face close to his so he could see the fire in my eyes. You do not love Sasha, I whispered. You love the ATM named Sasha. You love the servant named Sasha. But she is dead. She died the moment you locked her in that laundry room. I stood up straight and signaled to Mr. Thorne, who was waiting in the shadows of the terrace. He walked over and handed me a single sheet of paper. Jamal looked at the paper, confused. What is this? He asked. Is this the divorce settlement? I will sign it. Whatever you want. I just want to stay with you. I threw the paper at him. It fluttered down and landed on his chest. It is not a divorce settlement, I said. It is an eviction notice. Jamal picked up the paper, his hands trembling violently. Eviction. But this is my house. My name is on the deed. Not anymore, I said, crossing my arms. When my company bought the Davis Group debt this morning, we acquired all collateral assets. This house was used as collateral for the business loans your mother defaulted on 3 months ago. I pointed at the mansion behind me, the windows glowing with light. This house belongs to Brianna Sterling now, and I do not allow trespassers on my property. Jamal scrambled to his feet. You cannot do this. I have nowhere to go. My accounts are frozen. My car is company property. I know, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. It is tragic, isn't it? You are exactly where you wanted me to be, homeless, penniless, and alone. I checked the diamond watch on my wrist. You have 10 minutes, Jamal. 10 minutes for what, he cried. 10 minutes to go into that house, pack one bag of personal items, and get off my land. And by personal items, I mean clothes and toiletries. If you touch a single piece of electronics jewelry or anything of value, my security team will arrest you for theft. I gestured to the large, stone-faced guards standing by the door. They stepped forward, cracking their knuckles. Sasha, please. Jamal begged, tears streaming down his face. For real this time. It is dark. I have no money for a hotel. Where am I supposed to sleep? I looked at him, remembering the cold nights I spent on the floor of the laundry room. I remembered the way he stepped over me while I scrubbed the rug. I hear the park downtown has some nice benches, I said coldly. Just watch out for the kidnappers. Jamal stared at me, realizing finally that there was no mercy left in me. He let out a sob and ran into the house, followed closely by the guards. I turned my back on him and walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the city lights of Atlanta. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and jasmine. It smelled of freedom. I heard the front door slam 10 minutes later. I heard Jamal cursing as he dragged a duffel bag down the driveway. I did not turn around. I did not watch him leave. He was already a ghost to me. I stood there in my emerald dress, the queen of a silent castle, ready to burn the past to the ground and build something new from the ashes. The war was over, but the reign of Brianna Sterling had just begun. 30 days had passed since the night the lights went out on the Davis dynasty. 30 days since the police sirens wailed through the manicured streets of Buckhead, signaling the end of an era built on lies. In the visitation room of the Fulton County Jail, the air was stale and smelled of industrial disinfectant, a far cry from the lavender and lemon verbena home fragrance Patricia used to spend thousands on. Patricia sat on one side of the metal table wearing an orange jumpsuit that washed out her pale complexion. Her roots were showing a stark gray against the dyed blonde, and her face was lined with a month of sleepless nights. Across from her sat Tiffany, looking even worse. Without her extensions, her eyelash treatments, and her designer skincare, the arrogance had peeled away to reveal a frightened, angry child. They were not holding hands. They were not comforting each other. They were at war. It is your fault, Patricia hissed, her voice raspy. If you hadn't been so obsessed with that stupid handbag, Sasha never would have snapped. You just had to have the Hermes. You just had to push her. Me, Tiffany screamed back, not caring about the other inmates staring. You are the one who kidnapped a child. You are the one who cooked the books I just spent the money you told me was ours. You told me we were rich forever. You lied to me my whole life. I gave you everything, Patricia slammed her hand on the table. I kept you out of this mess for 20 years, and you repaid me by getting caught on camera assaulting a witness. My lawyer says you are going to get 5 years, Tiffany, 5 years in a cage, and I hope you enjoy every second of it. Guard. Tiffany yelled, standing up. Get her away from me. I want to be moved to a different block. She is crazy. As the guards dragged them apart, screaming obscenities at each other, the illusion of the perfect Davis family shattered completely. They were not a family. They were a cartel of narcissists who turned on each other the moment the money ran out. Meanwhile, 5 miles away, under the scorching Atlanta sun, a different kind of justice was being served. Hey, new guy, move it, a voice shouted. Jamal flinched, dropping the soapy sponge into the bucket of gray water. He was wearing a neon yellow polo shirt that was 2 sizes too big and soaked with sweat. He was standing in the bay of the Sparkle and Shine car wash, scrubbing the mud off the tires of a Ford F-150. I said move it, the manager yelled, clapping his hands. We have a line of cars out to the street. You are scrubbing that rim like you are afraid to break a nail. Put some back into it or you are fired. I am going, Jamal muttered, wiping sweat from his eyes with a dirty forearm. My back hurts. I do not pay you to have a back, the manager spat. I pay you minimum wage to clean cars. Now get the wheel well. Jamal knelt down on the wet concrete. His knees ached. His hands, once manicured and soft from days spent typing emails and signing checks he did not earn, were now blistered and raw. The chemicals in the soap stung his cracked skin. A car pulled up to the drying station. It was a Mercedes S-Class. Black, shiny, just like the one Jamal used to drive. He looked up, a pang of longing hitting him so hard it almost knocked the wind out of him. The driver rolled down the window. It was a man Jamal recognized, a former business associate, someone he used to play golf with at the country club. "Hey, you missed a spot on the hood," the man said, not even looking at Jamal's face. He just extended a hand with a $2 bill. "Here." Jamal stared at the $2. He looked at the man who used to call him a friend. The man did not recognize him. To this man, Jamal was just part of the machinery. Just a faceless worker in a neon shirt. Jamal took the money. "Thank you, sir," he whispered, his voice breaking. He watched the Mercedes drive away, driving into a life he would never touch again. He looked down at his reflection in the puddle of soapy water. He saw a man who had everything and threw it away because he was too weak to stand up to his mother. He saw a man who deserved exactly where he was. While the Davis family was drowning in the consequences of their actions, I was busy lighting a fire. I stood in the backyard of the mansion. The same garden where the party had happened was now quiet. The stage was gone. The flowers were replanted, but in the center of the patio I had built a large metal fire pit. Next to me stood a pile of clothes. It was my old wardrobe. The faded jeans, the oversized t-shirts with bleach stains, the gray servant's uniform Patricia made me wear when guests came over, and right on top the hideous blue bear mascot suit. I held a bottle of lighter fluid. I doused the pile, soaking the fabric that held so many memories of humiliation and pain. Mr. Thorne stood by the back door holding a clipboard. "The deed transfer is complete." "Ms. Sterling," he said, "the house is officially in your name. The locks have been changed. The staff has been replaced. The furniture is being auctioned off tomorrow." "Thank you, Edward," I said. I struck a match. The flame danced in the evening breeze, orange and yellow and alive. I dropped the match onto the pile. Whoosh! The fire roared to life, consuming the polyester fur of the bear suit first. Black smoke curled into the sky. I watched as the gray uniform turned to ash. I watched the symbol of my oppression disintegrate. I did not feel sad. I did not feel nostalgic. I felt lighter. With every thread that burned, I felt Sasha dying a little more. Sasha was the survivor. She was the one who endured. But she did not need to exist anymore. She had done her job. She had carried me through the desert so Brianna could enter the promised land. I watched the fire until it was just glowing embers. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. I turned away from the dying fire and walked back into the house. My house. My heels clicked on the marble floors, but this time I did not tiptoe. I walked with the heavy, confident stride of a woman who owned the ground beneath her feet. I walked out the front door to where my own car was waiting. Not a Rolls-Royce this time, but a sleek white Range Rover I had bought with my own money from the settlement. I had one last stop to make before I could fully close the door on the past. The drive to the cemetery was peaceful. The city eventually gave way to rolling green hills and quiet oak trees. I parked the car and walked up the small hill to the older section of the graveyard. I stopped in front of two modest headstones, James and Martha Miller. They were my foster parents. The only people in my childhood who had treated me with kindness before they passed away in a car accident when I was 16, leaving me to the system that eventually placed me with the Davis family. I knelt down in the grass, ignoring the stain it might leave on my white pants. I placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave. "Hi, Mom," Hi, Dad, I whispered. The wind rustled the leaves of the oak tree above me, sounding like a soft hush. I did it, I said, my voice choking up. I found her. I found my real mother. You always told me I was special. You always told me that my family was out there somewhere looking for me. You were right. I traced the letters of their names on the cold stone. I am sorry I haven't visited in a while. I was lost. I was trapped in a bad place. But I am free now. And I made them pay. I made them pay for every single day they made me feel worthless. A single tear rolled down my cheek. I am going to change my name back, I told them. I am going to be Brianna again. But I will never forget the girl you raised. I will never forget Sasha. She was strong because you loved her. I stayed there for a long time watching the twilight settle over the graveyard. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in 20 years. It felt like they were listening. It felt like they were smiling. Finally, I stood up. I wiped my face and took a deep breath of the cool evening air. Goodbye, Sasha, I whispered to the wind. You can rest now. I turned and walked back down the hill. I did not look back at the graves. I did not look back at the suffering. I looked forward toward the city lights glowing on the horizon, toward the empire waiting for me, and toward the mother who was waiting to help me rule it. The sun rose over Atlanta on the day of the grand opening, painting the sky in shades of triumphant gold and royal purple. The building that had once housed the corrupt Davis Group had been completely transformed. The dreary gray stone was now polished glass. The old sign which had stood as a symbol of my oppression was gone. In its place, gleaming in massive silver letters against the skyline, was the name of the new empire: Brianna Sterling Enterprises. I stood in the center of the ballroom, wearing a white suit that was sharp enough to cut glass. The room was filled with the same socialites, bankers, and politicians who used to walk past me when I was serving hors d'oeuvres. But tonight, they were not ignoring me. They were lining up to shake my hand. They were desperate for a moment of my time. The mayor, a man who had once laughed at a joke Patricia made about my cheap shoes, bowed his head respectfully as he approached me. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice dripping with admiration. "What a magnificent turnaround. The city is so proud of what you have done with the company. You are a visionary." I shook his hand firmly, my grip communicating that I remembered everything, but I had chosen to move past it. "Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are just getting started." Waiters circulated through the room with trays of crystal flutes, but this time I wasn't the one holding the tray. I watched a young girl, probably no older than 20, nervously balancing a heavy platter of appetizers. She caught my eye and froze, looking terrified that she might drop it. I excused myself from the mayor and walked over to her. Her hands were shaking. I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Breathe," I whispered. "You are doing a great job." The girl looked at me, shocked that the owner of the building was speaking to her. "Thank you, ma'am," she stammered. "I am not ma'am." I smiled. "I am Brianna, and never let anyone make you feel small because of the uniform you are wearing. You are the most important person in this room because you are the one making it run." I slipped $100 bill into her apron pocket and walked away, leaving her beaming. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. I would never become the monsters I had defeated. I would build an empire where people were respected, not owned. As the jazz band began to play a slow, soulful melody, the crowd parted. Walking toward me was Vivian Sterling, my mother. She looked radiant, her years of worry erased from her face. She was holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. We walked out onto the balcony, away from the noise and the adoration of the crowd. The night air was cool. Below us, the city of Atlanta sprawled out like a sea of diamonds. We stood in silence for a moment, just breathing in the reality of our victory. "You did it," Vivian said softly, handing me a glass. "You did not just take back what was yours. You built something better." I leaned against the railing, looking at the city that had once been my prison. "We did it," I corrected her. I would still be running in the dark if you hadn't left the light on for me. Vivian turned to me, her eyes searching my face. Do you ever miss her? Who, I asked, Sasha. Vivian said. The girl who survived. The girl who scrubbed floors and dreamed of a family. Do you miss the simplicity of her life? I thought about it. I thought about the fear, the hunger, the constant need to make myself invisible. No, I said honestly. I do not miss the pain. But I respect her. Sasha was the one who endured. She was the one who learned how to listen when no one thought she was in the room. She was the one who learned that patience is a weapon. Brianna was born with a silver spoon, but Sasha forged herself in fire. Vivian nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. You are the best of both worlds, my daughter. You have the sterling blood, but you have the survivor's heart. That is why no one will ever be able to stop you. I took a sip of the cider. It tasted sweet and crisp. What about them? I asked, not needing to say their names. Vivian looked out at the horizon. Patricia and Tiffany are settling into their new reality in federal prison. Their appeals were denied this morning. As for Jamal, my security team saw him at the bus station. He bought a one-way ticket to nowhere. They are gone, Brianna. They are dust in the wind. I felt a weight lift off my chest, a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. The ghosts were finally exorcised. So what is next? Vivian asked, clinking her glass against mine. I looked at the reflection of the new sign in the glass door. Brianna Sterling Enterprises. Next, I smiled. We rewrite the rules. We find every other girl who has been told she is nothing, and we give her a ladder to climb. We use this power to make sure no one ever has to feel like Sasha again. Vivian laughed, a sound of pure joy. I was hoping you would say that. We turned back toward the party. The lights inside were warm and inviting. The music was swelling to a crescendo. I paused at the threshold, taking one last look at the night sky. For 20 years they tried to erase me. They tried to break my spirit with insults and hard labor. They tried to steal my name and my future. They thought that if they buried me deep enough under their lies, I would never see the light of day. I ran my hand over the velvet of my white suit. I touched the butterfly birthmark on my wrist, now displayed proudly for the world to see. They tried to bury me, I whispered to the universe. But they forgot the most important thing about the earth. They forgot that I was a seed. And now the harvest has come. I turned around and walked back into the light, ready to rule my kingdom. This story is a powerful reminder that your current circumstances do not define your ultimate destiny. Sasha's journey proves that resilience, patience, and self-belief are weapons more powerful than any inheritance. For years, she was told she was worthless, yet she carried a billion-dollar legacy in her blood. We teach people how to treat us, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to destroy the table where respect is no longer being served. Your value is innate, not given by others, and certainly not defined by those who cannot afford your worth. If you have ever felt like the world was trying to bury you, but you knew deep down you were meant to grow, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that their comeback is going to be stronger than their setback. Comment below with "I am a seed" to claim your future. Thank you for watching, and remember, the best revenge is massive success.